Be still and increase.
I have always found the story of Peter's denial intensely moving, partly because it's so easy to imagine in the mind's eye, the firelight flickering on the faces gathered round the brazier, the tense atmosphere of fear and loathing. The details of Peter's abject cowardice and failure have also helped to convince me of the truth of the gospel. In the ancient world, nobody would have dreamt of writing something that showed themselves or their friends in a bad light. You wrote your version of events to promote exactly the opposite result. But here it is, Peter being all too human. So what would you have done? Would you have been valiant for truth in those circumstances? My Bane grandfather had to watch his friends being tortured to death by the Japanese, but for most of my fortunate generation in this country, this sort of extreme situation is beyond our experience. We cannot know how we might react. On the other hand, we do have memories of occasions, in my case many occasions, when we could have spoken up to challenge some form of wrongdoing, but caution, cowardice and self-interest got in the way. So before you think too badly of Peter, consider, did you ever see a colleague being sexually harassed and fail to say anything? Yes, guilty in my case. Did you ever witness workplace bullying and remain silent in case they came for you next? Yes, guilty again. Did you walk past criminal activity on the streets of London with face carefully turned away? Yes, I'm putting up my hand to that one too. You may well not have had these experiences, but I would be very surprised if you have never failed to speak up about something. Even as I speak of my own failures, part of my mind is thinking up excuses, remembering how different office life was in the 1980s, remembering living in a rough part of South London where the police barely had control of the streets. It's at this point that the Lord turns to look at me. As Voltaire put it, evil is what happens when good people do nothing. The sickening realization that we should have behaved differently doesn't always arrive right away. It can take time for the Lord's gaze to catch up with you. But then the tears come. I think that Peter wept only in part because of his shame. Partly it was because he saw forgiveness in the face Jesus turned towards him. Because God's forgiveness is instant. As soon as the remorse bites down, you can know yourself forgiven. Human forgiveness, on the other hand, that may take much longer, not least because we find it so difficult to forgive ourselves. So where do we find the physical, mental, and spiritual resources to stand up and be counted? The problem with real-life situations is that they can develop in the blink of an eye. You have no time to prepare yourself with carefully chosen words, considered phrases. Looking back at my much younger self, there was no way I would have had the necessary strength of character to make a difference. I had not yet learned how to centre my prayer life in silent companionship with God. Nor had enough misfortune yet come my way to make me sensitive enough to the fears and struggles of other people. It takes practice, courage, and experience to know how to reach inside yourself in moments of crisis. If necessary, to appeal directly to Jesus to help you find the words you need for a tense situation. Only out of that still centre of presence that we all carry within us will come the peace and power we need to confront the ugly truths we see about us all the time. But take courage and remember, as Peter is about to discover in the days of this story still to come, that perfect love casts out. Amen.